research in transport economics and cost-benefit analysis, and I must say it was much easier to be a researcher because I never had to decide anything. I could say, well, that's good from that part, and from that part, as a politician, I have to decide, should we build this or not? And of course, with all uncertainties there are, well, you can always make as good a decision as circumstances are. And I have 2 slides, and let's go to slide 2. And this is my home region. I will take examples from there. And as you all know, reality and the world around us changes quickly. And Mr. Harold Reuter took half of my speech, so I had to rewrite it, or at least rethink something. It was a good part he took, and good things he said. But one thing for us is, of course, we are peripheral as all of us in this room, and it's to be part of the whole has always been important, because on a national level, sometimes on an EU level, they tend to forget us. Sometimes they forget us on maps, and sometimes they forget us in reality. So it's always a fight to tell them that, hello, we do exist, and we have good ideas, and we can participate. We can also help develop this region. And that's why I think it's of utter importance that CPMR keeps its focus, keeps on focusing on territorial cohesion. Because if you want to build an EU for every citizen, it must be easy to travel for goods, for people. It must be easy to meet. And that's why territorial cohesion is of the utter importance. So we must keep on building and working on those things. We were very glad when we heard about the core corridors, that they were to implement 9 core corridors, because we saw opportunities. We saw also opportunities that they will stretch up to us, that we will have a better inclusion, better discussions. We were a little disappointed when we realized that the core corridors were the things coming on the first maps, but the rest of the core network in northern Sweden were not appearing. So we felt a little sad, lonely, blue in the gray areas for a short while. Then we realized there must be possibilities, and of course there are always possibilities, and we have very, very good experience of working with the EU Commission. So we suggest if there can be coordinators for the corridors, of course there must be able to have coordinators also for the so-called gray areas. So we suggested that from the 4th North regions in Sweden, CPMR and other regions also, because they experience the same thing as us. I said, well, this is a really good idea. So we put this forward with CPMR in the 10 days in Riga, and CPMR also wrote a letter to Commissioner Bulc suggesting a grey area coordinator, we could call it. We got a quick answer, not what we had suggested, but it was a good answer, because they said we will not have any new coordinators, but the coordinators we have appointed have a responsibility for what's going on outside of the corridors. And we think that has already been proven, and also Harold mentioned that. And we had a really good meeting from our region with Mr. Pat Cox in Copenhagen. We invited him, so he will come out to northern Sweden and discuss the other parts of the core network, because it's all a system, it holds together. And also we are working, because you just can't sit down and feel lonely. You have to work, and you have to put ideas. So we have projects in the CEF from the Botnian corridor, from the Narvik connection, as was mentioned, and from Uzbekistan as well. And we're also working with the other corridors, motorways of the seas. We have the midway alignment, which is not just a ferry, but it's a connection between Umeå and Vasa, but it's of course a connection between Norway, Sweden, Finland, and also into Russia, because it doesn't stop in Umeå, it doesn't stop in Vasa. And there we have very good cooperation with DG Move as well. And we're preparing a conference on this midway alignment, and we have invited also Mr. Barry Simpson, who is the coordinator for the motorways of the seas. So we see opportunities, and we also see a very good will to work with the whole network and not just with the corridors, and that was exactly what we were hoping for when the first maps had been a little more rewritten. We also had a meeting last week in Kemenlaxo, our Baltic Sea Transport Group, and we totally agree that we have to keep on working in all these corridor groups, in all these forums, and all these things that exist, because we are important and our opinions do matter, and we get proof of that every day. So conclude, yes, there are grey areas. Personally, I don't really like the name grey areas. If we look at ourselves in our regions, they are beautiful, colorful, lots of things are happening, diversified, so it's more like rainbow areas, but okay, let's settle for grey areas. But we can see that it's always a fight for us to be on the maps, to be part of the activity, but and that was what I was trying to describe, this is how we are working. You have to be active, and when you are active, when you come with good ideas, the EU Commission is seldom the problem. We can see it's much harder to work with the national level when it comes to cooperation, infrastructure, and things like that. So that's one conclusion. We see that CPMR has been a really good help here, and how we can work together as regions, because we have similar problems quite often, and when we can work through an organization like CPMR, then we become really, really powerful. So to conclude, Europe needs transport systems that include, not exclude. Europe needs more cooperation, not less cooperation. The regions with CPMR is the Commission's best friends, or as the more young people say on Twitter, BFF, best friends forever. Thank you.
Merci Erik pour ces couleurs suédoises et ce gris bleu suédois. Sans transition et sans plus tarder, je passe la parole à Marc Ponsi-Ponce, représentant du gouvernement des îles Baléares, qui va nous faire lui un zoom, un point particulier sur la question insulaire en lui demandant